Okay, anyway, so suppose it was common knowledge that if you were a righteous person of great faith and prayed deeply, and all of a sudden your limb would grow back. That would reduce God to a kind of supernatural force. Isn't he already supposed to be a kind of supernatural? Anyway. And by pushing the button labeled prayer, you could accomplish anything you wanted. And then here's his horror story. What would that do to moral independence? Oh, yeah, okay. What? You know, we've already got a God who tells us we have to behave in certain ways if we want to be admitted into heaven, and if we do certain things, we'll be thrown into hell. That kind of compromises moral independence too, right? But he's making this bizarre argument about God cannot answer your prayers because that would somehow compromise something, moral independence. And he gives a specific example of growing back amputated limbs. You know, someday soon science is going to be able to grow back amputated limbs. We'll figure this out. That's what developmental biologists do. And Anyway, what my answer to this is, you see, once upon a time I did research on limb regeneration in salamanders. It's really easy to do, although it might be kind of cruel. Yeah, I try to get this past your IRB nowadays. But you can take a pair of scissors and just snip the leg off of a salamander using proper anesthetic, right? Okay, let's be humane about this. And the thing is that within a few weeks, so a month or two, it will grow its limb back. Now think about this. Kendall just said, well, God can't do this for us humans, but apparently he can for salamanders. Which makes me wonder, you know. One thing I wonder is, okay, maybe this is why I'm an atheist. I worked on salamanders. It's a sure way to convince you that there is no God. All I have to do is bring Ken Miller into my lab and go, we can do this experiment easy. It's a trivial experiment to do. And then he'd become an atheist. No, I don't expect that. But there are other alternatives I'm sure that he would bring up. It may be that God just loves newts more than he does human beings. This is a reasonable hypothesis. Or perhaps, and this is the tragic thing, perhaps new wish fulfillment has destroyed their moral independence. We clearly need to do more experiments in this field on the moral independence of newts. Okay, so I think I've gotten the message across. I really think that we as scientists cannot kowtow to religion in the classroom. We have to be pretty forthright that magic explanations do not belong in the science classroom. We're going to exclude them. And I would actually say that if you talk to most science educators, they're not atheist enough. If you read the NCSE, if you read the National Academy of Sciences statements on these, they're pretty namby-pamby. They're pretty soft on religion. And I think they're not scientists enough to do this right. But we need to get more aggressive with this. However, and I have to put out this caveat, that doesn't mean that we should proselytize for atheism in the classroom. I'm not arguing for that at all. The classroom should be secular. That's different than atheist, okay? The classroom should be secular, not atheist. I'm never going to walk into a class and tell the students that they need to abandon their churches if they want to get an A out of me. That will never happen. But I should be able to present the theory of evolution. I should be able to discuss the science behind evolution without having to bow to the Pope or to the local Baptist minister or to Ray Comfort, of all people. I am going to be presenting the ideas without compromise and just telling them, here's the evidence. Understand how we come to this conclusion. Now, this I think is an important conclusion. You know, teaching the evidence is not the same as imposing religious dogma. This is what I'd say to Michael Bruce. That what you're doing in the science classroom, if you're doing it right, is you're not getting up there in front of the audience and telling them, this is the answer. You must accept this answer. Memorize this for the test. No, what you do in a good science classroom is you teach the students how we came to that answer. We teach them the evidence behind it. We teach them the reasoning. We actually try to teach them to think critically about this. I tell all my students, interrupt me anytime, ask me questions. Because that's what you've got to do as a scientist. You've got to be prepared to answer those difficult questions. So this is part of teaching science too, is avoiding dogma, not just religious dogma, but scientific dogma as well. It's just not our fault. Religion, or reality, has a godless bias, right? Reality is godless. Sorry, there is no evidence anywhere of a deity. So why should we be even considering this stuff in the classroom? Now, this is going to give people like Michael Lewis conniptions. And it's going to frighten timid school administrators everywhere if we put them and tell them, no, science is secular and we are going to teach this in an entirely secular fashion in the classroom, and tell your minister to shut up, I don't care what he's saying. That's going to scare people. But it's the reality of what we have to do. We need to embrace that fact. You know, just think about the examples that we know. Think about what we know about the universe, for instance. So this is a picture I just really like. I hate bringing in astronomy, I'm a biologist. But okay, I'll show you a little astronomy, because it's really cool stuff. This is about deep space. This is an image taken by the Herschel Deep Field Telescope. And what they did is they aimed the scope at a tiny, apparently empty patch of the sky that was just 7 arc minutes on the sides. They're aiming this one little, tiny little wedge of the sky. And they got their telescope program to track this. They just accumulate photons from that one little spot for, I think this picture, it took something like 3 or 4 days, just light gathering to get the image out there. And what do they see? They see that the universe is huge, and it's full of objects. See all those objects there? Those aren't just stars. Those are whole galaxies revealed that are invisible to the feeble instrument of our eyes. You cannot see these. I don't care how hard you look. That completely dark patch of sky up there, this tiny little fragment of sky, is just full, thick with galaxies going far, far out into space. What you should learn from this is that we're minuscule, a tiny, insignificant fragment of a vast universe. Although, of course, we do have the asset of a greatly inflated sense of self-importance. Don't discount that. But the reality is that there is a bacterium drifting about in this room right now that takes up a larger percentage of the volume of the city of Murray than the whole of the Earth does in the universe. So that little bacterium that's floating around has a better right to claim that Murray was built specifically for it than for us to claim that the universe has the purpose of providing a home for us. We really are a tiny fragment of this universe. And that ought to be a part of every scientific teaching. That's a fact of the universe. It's not a fact of religion. Religions try to argue the opposite, that the entire universe is focused on us, that the universe is here for us, that God created us and created the universe for us, which is exactly wrong. That isn't the case. Another thing we know from astronomy is this is a diagram of the history of the universe. We know that the universe isn't just immense, but it's old, really old. And we are relatively recent arrivals. We are a species that is less than 200,000 years old, and we're living in a universe that is 13.7 billion years old. So old that it has churned through multiple generations of stars. This has implications. It's very hard to argue that humanity is the focus of cosmic intent when our species exists for such a tiny fraction of the span of the universe and occupies an even more infinitesimal fraction of the volume. These are facts. These are very annoying facts to religious believers, but that should not deter us from stating them. But here's the thing, religious just love to pervert the facts. They love to corrupt this knowledge and steal it for their own and make claims about it. Here's another scientist I respect. He's a smart guy. He's done great things. This is Francis Collins, who led the Human Genome Project. And I read his book, The Language of God, and there were places where I felt like wiping my ass with it, or setting it on fire. Well, not at the same time, but you know, it's a book where there's big chunks of it that are just excellent expositions of science, and then there are chunks that you just want to strangle the guy. He's crazy. Okay, so this is something Francis Collins wrote there. It says, in God and Astronomers, the astrophysicist Robert Jastrow wrote this final paragraph. At this moment, it seems as though science will never be able to raise the curtain on the mystery of creation. For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak. As he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. No, they haven't. This is a lie, okay? This is an infuriating lie. Some faiths did say that the universe had a beginning and it was created by a God. He only got it half right. It had a beginning, okay. There are other religions that say, no, the universe is infinite. So it's like, here's this coin flip you can make. Either it had a beginning or it didn't. And some of the religions get the answer right and some of them get it wrong. Is that testimony to the power of faith? Does that tell us that the theologians actually have some deep knowledge? No, it tells us they're playing a guessing game. Theologians did not come up with the general relativity equations or the Friedman equations derived from them, nor did they make the empirical observations of the redshift or the cosmic background radiation, all of which are evidence for the Big Bang. They've done neither the theoretical nor the empirical work to demonstrate this. Yet here is Jastrow, arrogantly claiming that theologians have accomplished so much in science. No, they haven't. Whenever I see this quote, I really want to change that word sitting and add an H to it. It's the only way they get an approximation of the truth. So this is going on all the time. Scientists come up with these great ideas, and there's always some theologian coming along and say, oh, we knew that all along. It's in our holy books. Yet when you look at their holy books, what you find is a mishmash of metaphor and legend and poetry, and some great writing and some crappy writing. You don't find anything clear in this that you can use. I mean, really, if the Bible contained all this information about physics, then 2,000 years ago, they should have been building telescopes. They should have been mentioning this stuff about the nature of the universe, and they weren't. Okay, let me talk about biology just a little bit. Martin Ribbons, he said that this idea that we share ancestry with other organisms was a question. It's not. This is a radial tree of life. And what it is made from the sequence information from only about 3,000 species. So we're looking at only 0.18% of the extant known biodiversity on the planet. So it's taking all these sequences and then building trees from the pedigrees to illustrate their relationships to one another. That gray fringe that you see all around the outer border, those are the names of the species. Your screen isn't big enough. You have to be, gigantic for you to be able to read them. But those are all the species right out there. And then the lines represent the branching pattern of their pedigree. The center is about 3.8 billion years ago. The outside rim of the circle is today. So we built this beautiful diagram using this data. We know quite a bit about the origin of life. We know quite a bit about relationships. We've got all this molecular information. Now, I mentioned that we humans are kind of self-important, so I will zoom in. There's the part you care about, okay? And what you see there is this word, yeah, it's faint. There we are, there's Homo sapiens. That's sandwiched in between a mouse and a salamander.